Mercedes is dominating Formula One, but the FIA just found something that could destroy it overnight. 3 races. 3 wins. Over half a second per lap faster than the entire grid. And now, a full investigation has been launched. Because what looked like pure dominance is starting to look like something else. An engine that behaves perfectly legal until it reaches real race conditions. Then it changes. More compression. More power. Up to 40 extra horsepower, hidden inside temperature behavior. And that alone was already shocking. But here's the part nobody expected. New evidence suggests that might not be the only advantage. More energy harvested. More efficient deployment. A system that actually gets stronger as the race goes on. So now the FIA isn't just checking one trick. They're investigating everything. And Mercedes? They're not denying it. They're preparing. So what exactly did the FIA discover inside this engine? Why does the performance increase instead of drop? And could this investigation completely change the championship overnight? Stay with me, because once you understand what's really happening here, you'll see why this might be the biggest technical controversy Formula One has seen in years. But to understand why this investigation just escalated, you have to understand what the FIA actually saw. Because this didn't start with a protest. It started with a pattern. A pattern that didn't make sense. Because when engineers looked at Mercedes race data, they noticed something very specific. The car wasn't just fast. It was getting faster. Not in qualifying. Not in short runs. Over time. Lap after lap. As temperatures stabilized. As the engine reached full operating condition, the performance improved. And that breaks one of the most basic rules of Formula One. Because normally, everything goes the other way. Tires degrade. Temperatures become harder to control. Energy becomes less efficient. Performance drops. But Mercedes was doing the opposite. And that's what triggered the deeper investigation. Because once something behaves outside the expected model, you don't assume it's normal. You assume there's a reason. So the FIA went beyond standard checks. They didn't just measure the engine in the garage. They started analyzing behavior in motion. How power evolves during a stint. How energy is recovered. How deployment changes across a lap. And that's when the first layer became clear. The compression. Because under normal testing, everything looked perfect. 16-1. Exactly within the limit. But in real race conditions, that number changed. 18-1. A gain that translates directly into power. Into acceleration. Into lap time. But here's where it becomes even more important. Because the FIA didn't stop there. They kept digging. And what they found next is what turned this into a full investigation. Because even after accounting for that extra power, the numbers still didn't match. There was still something missing. Still an advantage. That couldn't be explained by compression alone. And that's where energy comes in. Because Mercedes isn't just producing more power. They're using it better. Harvesting more energy per lap. Deploying it more efficiently. Maintaining performance longer than anyone else. And suddenly, this isn't one trick. It's a system. A system where heat, power, and energy all interact. All evolve together. And that's what makes it so difficult to regulate. Because you're not looking at a single component anymore. You're looking at behavior. Dynamic behavior. Something that changes with temperature. With load. With time. And that's why the FIA had no choice. They had to expand the investigation. Because if this system is fully understood, it could redefine how engines are built in this era. And if it's not controlled, every team will be forced to follow. But here's the tension inside Mercedes. Because they know exactly what they've built. They know why it works. But now, they're being analyzed in a way they weren't before. Not just for legality, but for intent, for design philosophy, for how far they've pushed the interpretation of the rules. And that's a very different kind of pressure. Because now the question isn't, is it legal? It's something much more uncomfortable. Should it be allowed to work like this? And this is where the situation becomes even more uncomfortable for Mercedes. Because once the FIA starts asking that question, everything changes. Because Formula One has always had 2 layers of rules. What is written? And what is intended. And most of the time, those 2 things align. But not here. Because technically, Mercedes followed the rule. The engine passes the test. The numbers are correct. 16-1. No violation. But in reality, on track, under real conditions, the behavior is different. And that's where the FIA starts to lose control. Because if one team can design a system that behaves one way during inspection, and another way during performance, then the entire regulation becomes vulnerable. Not broken, but exposed. And that's why this investigation is going further than anyone expected. Because now the FIA isn't just asking how the engine works. They're asking how it was conceived, what assumptions were made, what conditions were exploited, and whether the current rules are even capable of controlling this level of engineering. But here's where the pressure explodes. Because if the FIA decides this goes against the spirit of the rules, even if it's technically legal, they have the power to act. Not with penalties, but with directives, immediate changes, new interpretations. And those can arrive at any moment, without warning. And that's what makes this so dangerous for Mercedes. Because they're not defending a single component. They're defending a concept, a philosophy built around precision, around operating exactly at the edge of what the rules define. And once that edge moves, the entire system has to adapt. But adapting an engine, mid-season, is not simple. Because this isn't a software tweak. This is materials, geometry, thermal behavior, fundamental design. Things that take months to change, not days. So now Mercedes is facing a very specific risk. If the FIA acts quickly, they may be forced to reduce performance without having a full solution ready. And that's when dominance can disappear almost instantly. But here's the part that makes this even more intense. Because the rest of the grid is watching closely. Ferrari is ready. Honda is waiting. Every team is preparing for the same moment. The moment Mercedes loses even a fraction of that advantage. Because in Formula 1, you don't need a full second. You need a window. And if that window opens, even slightly, the entire championship changes. But now comes the most important question of all. Because this investigation is not just about stopping Mercedes. It's about understanding them. Because if the FIA fully decodes this system, if they truly understand how heat, compression, and energy interact, then this won't just affect one team. It will redefine the entire engine philosophy of this era. And that means one thing. What Mercedes built is not just controversial. It's influential. Because even if it gets restricted, even if it gets limited, the idea already exists. The knowledge is already out there. And sooner or later, others will find their own version of it. So this isn't just a fight over legality. It's a race to understand the future. And right now, Mercedes is ahead in that race. But the gap is starting to close. And now, we reach the moment where this stops being a technical story and becomes a turning point. Because once the FIA fully understands what Mercedes has built, they don't just react. They rewrite the game. Because Formula 1 has a pattern. Every time a team finds something like this, something that sits right on the edge, the sport adapts. The rules evolve. The advantage disappears. But the consequences stay. And that's exactly what's about to happen here. Because this investigation is not just closing a loophole. It's redefining how engines will be built from now on. No more static measurements. No more cold inspections. Everything will be dynamic. Measured in real conditions. Under real load. At real temperature. Exactly where Mercedes found their edge. And that changes the future. For everyone. Because now, every team has to think differently. Not just about power, but about behavior. How the engine evolves. How systems interact. How performance can exist in the space between definitions. And that's the legacy of what Mercedes has done. Even if the advantage disappears, the idea remains. But here's the critical moment. Because while the future is being shaped, the present is still being decided. Right now. On track. Because until the FIA fully enforces the new interpretation, Mercedes still has the edge. Still has the system. Still has the advantage that nobody else can replicate in time. And that creates a race against the clock. Not just for points. For control. Because every race before the final restriction is an opportunity to build a gap. A gap that might survive, even after the advantage is gone. And Mercedes knows it. That's why they're pushing harder than ever. Not just to win, but to secure the championship. Before the rules fully catch up. But here's where everything becomes real. Because eventually, the moment arrives. The moment where the FIA has full clarity. The moment where every variable is understood. The moment where the system is no longer ahead of the regulation. And when that happens, there is no more gray area. No more interpretation. No more hidden behavior. Just performance. Pure performance. And that's when the final truth is revealed. Because at that point, Mercedes has nothing left to rely on, except what they truly are. And that's the question everything has been building toward. When the system is fully exposed. When the advantage is fully removed. When the rules finally match reality, will Mercedes still be the fastest team on the grid? Or will this entire era be remembered as the moment they found something no one else could see, until it was already too late? And this is where everything finally comes full circle. Because when this moment arrives, when the FIA has closed every gap, when every system is measured exactly as it behaves on track, there is only one thing left. No more interpretation. No more advantage hidden in conditions. No more difference between what is tested and what actually performs. Just the car. Just the team. Just the truth. And that truth will do something Formula One rarely allows. It will separate innovation from dependency. Because if Mercedes continues to win, if they remain ahead under these new conditions, then what they built wasn't just a loophole. It was mastery. A deeper understanding of the system than anyone else. A level of integration the rest of the grid hasn't reached yet. But if they don't, if the gap disappears, if Ferrari closes in, if the field suddenly compresses, then the conclusion becomes unavoidable. This dominance was built on timing, on finding the exact moment where the rules had space, and exploiting it perfectly, before anyone else even realized it existed. And that's what makes this story so powerful. Because it's not just about Mercedes. It's about Formula One itself. A sport where the line is never fixed. Where the smartest teams don't just follow the rules. They explore them. Stretch them. Live exactly at their limits. And sometimes, they go so far that the sport has to redefine those limits. And that's exactly what's happening now. Because this investigation, this tension, this entire controversy, it's not the end of something. It's the evolution of the sport. But here's the final truth. The one everything has been building toward. Because no matter what happens next, no matter how the rules change, no matter how the balance shifts, Mercedes has already done something irreversible. They showed where the edge is. They proved it can be reached. And now, every team will chase it. In their own way. With their own ideas. With their own risks. And that means one thing. Formula One is about to change again. Because once one team finds the limit, the rest don't ignore it. They follow it. And push it even further. So when you watch the next race, you're not just watching cars on track. You're watching the moment after the discovery. The moment where the sport reacts, adapts, and moves forward. Because the Real story was never just about whether Mercedes broke the rules. It was about something much bigger. They found something the rules couldn't fully control. And now, the entire sport has to catch up.